You were born in Marlin.
Yes, holla back. Yes.
And then you grew up in Dallas, though, right? Like, when did you?
Yeah, I packed my bags when I was 1 or 2 and got the hell out of Marlin.
Yeah.
Yep, moved to the big city. I said I was going to the big city.
You packed them all yourself.
That's right. I say, hey, Mom, you need any help? I'm sort of anxious to get to the big city lights.
Yeah. So, what was it like growing up there? Like, what are your memories?
In Dallas?
Yeah, well, just...
my memories? Big family. We would go to church on Sundays, and the area that I lived was called South Dallas. And one of my earliest memories, and I think that maybe subconsciously it played a part in the blues or whatever, being involved in my music. We lived across the street from what musicians would call a honky-tonk. And I swear, it could have been B.B. King or Bobby Blue Bland. It was called the Dollhouse. And I stayed, my bedroom was right in the front. And I would fall asleep most weekends to that music, just hearing it.
You would just hear it from outside?
Yeah. I mean, and I was like, wow, that's sounding good.
So it was like in your subconscious?
You know, yeah, I was like, that music is sounding really, really good. Yep.
So when did you see the little flutes in your head?
Well, the flute part came actually in grade school. I was introduced to the flute when I went to the symphony. I went to the Dallas Independent Public Schools, and they would take us in the wintertime to the symphony, and I heard a particular piece. It's called Peter and the Wolf, and I remember it like it was yesterday when this little chase scene comes in, and I asked my teacher, I'm like, oh my God, I like that part. What is that called? And she said, that's a flute. Yeah. And I just, naively said as a kid, oh, I'm going to play that one day. I like that.
So it's like first or second grade or something like that?
Yeah. I said, I'm going to play that. And then I subsequently got what they call a song flute. It's a little plastic little recorder. And I was just cleaning up. I found it. I still have it. I think I'm going to donate that to the Schomburg. And I was like, I waited until I was about 10 years old because I was in, I have it marked on there. I think it's 5F was the grade I was in.
Wait, what was it? Oh, 5th grade?
Yeah, I was in 5th grade. And we learned how to play the scales and everything on it. And my mother got me piano lessons. I studied with this guy, and he taught me all like the church songs and everything, the hymns and stuff. And he taught me mainly, by chords and stuff. So
you had the theory and from an early age?
Yeah, I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but he was like showing me like 5, 4, 1, 6 chords. And mainly church hymns, but once I got the coordination of the piano.
So were you learning it all at all by ear, or was it, Well,
I always had a very, very good ear. However, when I was in the 5th grade, we learned from the inception of study the scales.
Yeah.
And also reading by the notes.
And were you studying it at all in a jazz vein, or was it?
I didn't study in the jazz vein until I really picked up the flute, the regular flute, very late. I picked that up in the 10th grade.
Oh, okay. So
when I went to when I went to high school, and they asked in the marching band, what did I want to play, and I said, oh, I already know I want to play the flute. So I think I was in the 9th grade actually. I was about 14.
So. When did you decide that you wanted to go to school to study it? Like, because you went to Texas
Southern
University.
Well, what happened? They had told us in the 11th grade or end of 11th grade that these talent scouts were going to be coming from different colleges, and they were offering 2 or 4 year scholarships if you passed the audition and you were accepted. And so. By the time I was in 11th, 12th grade, I was very adept with the flute in terms of studying marching band, symphonic music as well, and as well as jazz, because from the outset, the band director said if anyone wants to learn how to play jazz, he was teaching us how to play jazz after. And he had what they call a stage band. Yeah, you could stay back, and we had a stage band and we would go out and compete different places around the city and outskirts with other high schools and stuff. And one of the first jazz tunes that I learned was "You Go to My Head" and "Satin Doll," which I later recorded. It became one of my bigger albums. And "Take the A Train" and "Little Darling." Did a lot of Duke Ellington. But to answer your question, I won this. I passed the audition. I won a 4-year scholarship to Texas Southern University in Houston.
Was it the school itself known for the music program particularly, or was it?
Well,
one of many
no, it was one of the first black colleges in Texas set up, and it was primarily known as a teaching college. Also, Texas Southern is very well known for its law school. It has a very good law school and art department. But what had happened, a band director had come there, a new guy from Tennessee by the name of Benjamin Butler, and he had absolutely turned the band system around and made it like a really strong competitor in terms of marching band style. We were playing like all the modern songs, so he made it exciting. Like we were playing like Delphonic songs, stylistics, and all of the. It was called the Ocean of Soul.
That was the name of the program?
No, that was the name of the marching band.
Oh, okay.
So it was a lot of fun, but he also ran it was Ocean of Soul, and Ocean of Soul, and he ran a very tight ship. And that sometimes I remember we'd be on that field at 2 o'clock in the morning. And then if you got to get up for 7 o'clock, you
really lived and breathed it.
Yeah, you got to go to got to go to class and stuff. Right, exactly. But it was a learning experience, and I learned a lot. And I was first chair there, as I had been in high school. I was first chair there, and everybody in my family, the girl, my sister, and my brothers, we used to play music at home. I was the only one to pursue it professionally, but I had a cousin whom I'd never met. I used to see his picture when I would go and visit one of my great aunts, and there's this guy in his black and white picture with a trumpet, and they say, "Yeah, that's your cousin. He lives in New York," and that seemed like such a world away. Little kid, and I see his picture on the piano. Say he plays with a great orchestra. He plays with Duke Ellington and Count Basie. And he travels all over the world. And I went to Southern Methodist, and I came up to New York in the summer of '71. And my mother, she really didn't want me to go. My dad, he let her go. And my mom said, "Well, if you're gonna go, at least call your father's cousin." Eddie Preston. So I called him. I had never met him, and we arranged to meet. And he said, "Well, I have this gig." And I was like, "What's the gig?" I didn't even know what that was. He's like, "You're right." It's like I'm gonna be playing with Duke Ellington. And I was like, "Duke Ellington?" And I said, "Do you know who that is?" And he started laughing. He said, "Yeah, and actually it's my boss." And he invited me to go and meet him and to bring my flute. That was the third day I was here.
So is the story true that Dizzy Gillespie had met you at some point?
Oh, what happened at Southern Methodist University, they had a really good jazz program. Because even though I was at Texas Southern, that was a black school, but at the time, the the jazz band was just really getting into place. I was disenchanted in that I felt like they were directing me towards more European classical music, and I wasn't feeling that. I wanted to play, either R&B or jazz music. So, ironically, I had to transfer to Southern Methodist University, that school, and they had a jazz program. As soon as I left Texas Southern, that's when they got the jazz band, and they started kicking behind, and they got really, really good.
Wow.
Yeah, but they had a pretty good stage band at SMU, and they made me like one of the featured soloists. The band director couldn't believe that I could play as I did, and that's what happened. We went to Austin for Texas, what's it called, Texas Collegiate Jazz Festival.
Okay.
and I was competing in the category of best soloist, and I didn't win in that category, and Dizzy Gillespie was one of the judges, and he was like really, really pissed off, and he said, I felt you should have won. You were the best. You blew that guy away. And he said, trust me, the guy that won, they probably won't remember his name, but if you go to a place like New York, he said, the world will know your name. He said, you got it. So I thought about him like, my God, that's Dizzy Gillespie saying that. And he started planting the seed, and I was thinking about going anyway because I had been reading about the Apollo Theater in this magazine, Ebony Magazine.
Yeah.
And I had planned on going up to check out the amateur show. So I'd saved up my little coins and everything, and I was going to do, I guess now in retrospect, an exploratory trip. And my mom always said I was a fast girl. I just had my girlfriends to cover for me, and this was during the era when they used to have actual dorm mothers and stuff, and they covered for me. And
so what exactly?
I took the, I just was, I didn't even tell my mother I was going because I know she wouldn't let me go.
Oh, yeah.
And I just saved up and got my bus ticket, and I went away for the weekend. Mm-hmm. Well, I thought it was going to be for a weekend. It actually ended up taking a lot longer because it took like 2 days on the bus to get here.
Yeah, it's a long ride.
So I was actually gone about 5 days, and I came up here to meet my idol. At that time was Hubert Laws, and I came up on the Greyhound bus, and remember going through states I used to just read about, Virginia and West Virginia and everything. I'm like, boy, I really thought I was grown then. I'm like, boy, I'm going to the big city.
Yeah.
And I had called and got a number for Hubert, and he agreed he was going to meet me at the bus station. And he was so nice.
Hubert
Laws.
Oh, okay. So,
yeah, this was like in 1970, the spring. And
so you had met him back at the college?
Actually, 71, huh?
You had met him back at the college?
I had never met Hubert.
Oh, okay.
I just had his records, the Laws of Jazz, and I used to practice to that. You know, I knew all the solos. His brother, Ronnie Laws, used to go to Texas Southern, or no, he would. I think it was called St. Augustine. It was in St. Augustine, some junior college or something, and I met him on one of the competitions, and we became friends. And he was friends with my bandmate, William Jeffries, who subsequently went on to write one of his biggest hits on the Friends and Strangers album, Always There, which is like a fusion classic. Yeah. So he introduced me.
That was on Ronnie's, right?
So I asked Ronnie for his brother's number.
Oh, okay. And so then you were able to.
And like, look, I've never been shy or scared, as Mystical says, and I called him up and says, look, I want to meet you. And he agreed, and he came and picked me up at the bus station. And my God, when I walked out and saw all the traffic and stuff, I was like, I could not believe it. I could not believe it. And this guy came up to me, and I'd never seen anything like this. And apparently, he was like a homeless guy, and he was like, go inside, you can't stand outside. And he's like, they call me the Wild Man. And so when Hubert came to pick me up, I was like in tears. He was like, what's wrong with you? I said, the Wild Man told me to go inside. He's like, who the hell is the Wild Man? I'm like, you don't know the Wild Man? He's like, no, I don't know the Wild Man.
It sounds like one of those nightmares as a kid, you know, you have a recurring dream about it.
I'm telling you, I still have flashbacks on the Wild Man.
Boogeyman or something like that.
I still have flashbacks about the Wild Man. And so he was very nice, and we went to his apartment, and then he took me across the George Washington Bridge, and he had this car, and I've never seen a car like that in Texas. And I said, let me write the name of that down. What's the name of the car? And he said, it's called a Porsche. I said, oh, a Porsche? What kind of car is that? Now that I know what a Porsche is, I know it was not a slum car. Yeah. It was a nice car. Sure. And so that was a highlight. And when I went back, it just inspired me. I sent off for the New York City Yellow Pages. I said, when I come back, I'm gonna find a place to stay. That was like in January. And at the end of that semester, I knew I was leaving school to come up here. I was like, I'm coming back to get me a recording deal.